Jacksonville Jaguars, who made a splash immediately in the draft by trading up from 5 to 2 to take Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter at second
What a
overall.
move. What a move, man. This is really when the draft party got crazy at your house, Dakota, when this move happened. And we were starting to hear rumblings before the draft party was starting. Now you were getting ready, you were hosting, so you're getting the house ready and everything like that. So you weren't hearing the rumblings like I was, but I was starting to hear, I'm like, man, are the Jags gonna make this move? And they did it, man. Made an absolute blockbuster move to move up to number 2 overall to draft Travis Hunter. They honestly, I think easily the most interesting prospect in this entire draft class. One of the most interesting prospects that we have seen in years. Two-way player, full time at Colorado at wide receiver and cornerback. You all know that. If anyone's watching this video by now, you probably know this, but he was electric, man. And what he's going to do in the NFL, people have debated for months. Like, is he going to be a full-time receiver? Is he going to be a full-time corner, part-time receiver? Who knows how the Jags are going to use him? Right now, it sounds like they want him to be a full-time wide receiver with packages at cornerback, which honestly, to me and you, Dakota, I think that was the most surprising outcome to us coming into the draft, because it felt like if he was going to do anything full-time and one thing part-time, it was going to be full-time cornerback with packages at wide receiver.
Yeah, that was the most surprising part in all of this. I think, I had mentioned it to you probably a month ago or whatever. I was like, I don't think we've had enough rumblings of people projecting the potential for a trade up for Travis Hunter. Like, with his unique skill set, I was surprised that wasn't going on more. And then of course it happens. But yeah, I do think it is interesting because what we talked about is it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to have a guy start at corner, be out there down to down, and then have offensive packages where you put them in, because that has happened time and time again in the NFL. With even guys that are like return specialists, like a Devin Hester, right? Like the Bears, he was listed at wide receiver, but it was really, he was a return guy. They would sometimes plug him in on some offensive plays. I think it's easier to do that route than it is to have like packages on defense, because and I'm guessing it's going to be more situationally driven, where they may want to put him out there on third downs, or if they get up, you want to make sure they don't come back in the game. But that also seems like you're putting in more of an injury risk if you are also winning the game. So that is the more surprising part to me. And from the trade perspective, I don't know if I love it, to be completely honest. Like, I do love Travis Hunter as a player, and I think he's going to be a very good player. But giving up the 2 firsts with the position that the Jags are in, I do think a lot of this had to do with, Shad Khan, the ownership, wanting kind of a face of the franchise. Because Trevor Lawrence never really turned into that. And I think it's partly his personality. He's just not a guy that likes being in the limelight very much. So I do understand it from that perspective. Because now, I think his jersey was the number 1 selling jersey already
Of course.
in the NFL
Yeah.
for all the rookies that were drafted. So it works. So they've got that guy now for sure.
We talked about that, man, and I totally agree with that. I think that's something that you have to take into account. It's like, as new NFL analysts, Dakota will call ourselves, we like to just look at how are they going to fit in with the team, how are they going to help the team win. But ownership's looking at more than that, man. We saw that with the Giants documentary on Hard Knocks in the offseason when the Giants owner lost Saquon. He was like, man, I don't know if I want to let Saquon go, because he's been such a pivotal part of this franchise. And when he goes to games, I'm sure he's seeing a million Saquon Barkley jerseys in the stands. Like, those things matter to owners, man. And the Jaguars especially, because the Jaguars have been kind of like I won't say like a failing franchise, but they've had hard time selling tickets at points. But a guy like Travis Hunter, man, you are not going to have trouble selling tickets with Travis Hunter, playing in that stadium now, dude. And doesn't surprise me at all. Number 1 jersey sales, like, those things matter to these owners. But I agree with you from a pure like team building perspective, man. We just don't love trading up for non-quarterbacks. I just don't ever love it. And honestly, we've seen trading up for quarterbacks at points recently not be that great. Like with the Bryce Young trade. But listen, dude, Travis Hunter is interesting because, yes, you give up 2 first-round picks. However, you also have to look at him as 2 players. I mean, he is technically 2 players, or at least 1.5 players. So it kind of makes it more of an interesting conversation. I love bringing Travis Hunter in, like you said. The trade up was aggressive. It was very aggressive because they only traded up 3 spots. They gave up next year's first and this past draft's second round pick as well,
Yep.
which was a very high second round pick. Um, so it's a very aggressive move, man. But it could be like a game changing move for this team, though, man. It really could be because he plays two of the most impactful positions outside of quarterback, and if he can play both, like at some extent, obviously he's not going to do both full time. Like that's just not realistic because even at points in college, man, we saw him get exhausted during games and not be
Yeah.
able to finish out games because he was playing both sides. But if he can be a full time receiver with Brian Thomas Jr., which is so intriguing, man, that's such an intriguing receiving core, and have some packages at corner, like be like some kind like on nickel packages on third downs, bring him in at cornerback, dude. He could end up being worth the capital that they gave up if he can do that.
Yeah, and you nailed that there because at the end of the day, he is essentially two players. At the very least, depth at two positions. He will be on the depth chart at two positions, which is absolutely unique to today, not just the NFL, but football. It's why he just won the Heisman, was what he was able to do at both of those positions. But yeah, pairing him with Brian Thomas Jr. is kind of disgusting, to be honest,
It's
because they're
disgusting.
and going into year 5 of Trevor Lawrence now, it did seem like a move where they just wanted the guy because he is a high character guy. Like I've never
Yes.
seen people say anything negative about Travis Hunter, and like you watching him in his press conference, the introductory one, like the dude's happy to be there. He loves it. Like, and it's gonna be hard not to root for him in the NFL. But Trevor Lawrence going into year 5 has not really broken out like the generational hype that he got. But now you pair Travis Hunter with Brian Thomas Jr. There's really no excuses there. So want to see what they do there offensively with him, and then how they utilize him on defense will be really interesting, and kind of having like the Travis Hunter watch on where you're watching the Jags on defense. You're like, is he out there? When are they using him and how will be interesting. And then back to your point, on the ownership side, it is something we kind of touched on this with the quarterback stuff a little bit, but like the things that get overlooked a lot when talking about team building and everything, people just want it to be this basic thing of like what helps you win, but there is so much more to it. It's a business at the end of the day, especially for these owners. And they have to sell tickets. They have to sell merchandise. They have to do those things. And as an expansion team, they've not really had like Maurice Jones-Drew is probably the closest they've come to having like a big face of the NFL-ish type guy, comparatively to like the Texans, right? Who were an expansion team, but they've had Andre Johnson and J.J. Watt, future Hall of Fame guys. They've not really had that. They had the Mark Brunell and Jimmy Smith days, but they haven't had it for a while, at least since then. So I think it makes sense to get a guy like that in the building that you want to be in your locker room. And you're going to see, to your point with the Saquon thing, you're going to see half the stadium wearing Travis Hunter jerseys for their first home game.
There's no doubt about it, man. It's gonna be fascinating to watch. It's one of the funnest storylines in the NFL in this upcoming season, to be honest with you. Even though it is, division rivals, if you will, for us, since we're fans of other teams in the division. But it's gonna be fun to watch, dude. And kind of to your T-Law point, because that's a big part of this, man. Because T-Law has shown flashes in the NFL. He's shown flashes of greatness. But giving this man, this has the potential to be the best wide receiver core in the NFL. I don't think that's insane to say when Brian Thomas Jr. broke out the way he did. He's arguably the best wide receiver out of last year's draft class, which was one of the most loaded wide receiver draft classes ever. It was an absolutely loaded class last year with Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and then Brian Thomas Jr. ends up being the most productive out of the 4, which is very interesting. Now you throw Travis Hunter into that, dude. Like you said, man, excuses are over for T-Law. Like that's the kind of move that the team is expecting to win right now, dude. Like with this team they built around Trevor Lawrence. So it's gonna be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and to that point, we'll get back to the second round pick or their first third rounder, but jumping ahead a little bit to their second third rounder and their fourth rounder, continuing on that trend of putting pieces around your franchise quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Wyatt Millam, I love him. He was a guy that also at one point was getting some hype for the first, and then getting him in the third round is really good value. A guy that can play pretty much anywhere on the interior offensive line. So a guy that could come in and on an offensive line that has been a little rough at times. I think he could be competing for the starting center job sooner rather than later. And then Bashal Tutin, the kind of utility weapon from Virginia Tech, 4.32 speed, was utilized in kind of like, I think I compared him to Nyheim Hines when you and I were chatting offline, of that running back who's kind of a wide receiver. So adding another guy like that with his speed to this offense to go alongside Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter is also really interesting. So and Gladstone's first draft was very much let's load this offense up.
Yeah, dude, this Wyatt Millen pick is very interesting, dude. I mean, he apparently didn't allow a single sack in his last 3 seasons. That's absurd. How is this guy a third round?
And he goes in the third round. Yes.
Yeah, I don't understand how this guy's a third round pick. Maybe he didn't test that well. You'd have to give me those numbers because I don't have them in front of me. But man, that seems like a guy that's definitely going to play at some point and play on this offensive line. So I absolutely love that in the third round. Insanely productive player. I mean, this is absolutely insanely productive college player. So be kind of surprised if he doesn't get a chance at some point in the NFL. And then moving to defense, dude, Jack Kaiser in the 4th round. Love that. That's a guy I like to take a lot in the mock draft sims, dude. One of the better, I mean, I wouldn't say better linebackers in this class, but one of those guys that could make an impact in the 4th round, I would say. But yeah, dude, I mean, honestly, the first few picks I absolutely love for the Jags. Listen, if the Travis Hunter thing is going to be a big that's going to be the big thing you look at in this draft and say, okay, is this a good draft class or not? Because now you don't own that next year's first round pick. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But
yeah, the defensive guys, Jack Kaiser, linebacker from Notre Dame, part of the run to the national championship game where they came up a little short. And then Caleb Ransaw, corner out of Tulane in the 3rd with their first 3rd round pick. They had back-to-back picks there. Incredibly athletic guy, but not a ton of production. So it is interesting where with Gladstone's first draft, there's been a combination of high athlete versus production. Kind of did a little bit of both. And I like that, to be honest, because that's how you can kind of maximize potentials. Ransaw ran a 4.33, one of the higher athletic corners in this entire class. Also had 16 bench reps. His size at 5'11", 197, which is kind of crazy. So he's got some strength to play a little bit of press. Just not a very productive corner. And then completely random note on him. He's Dre Kirkpatrick's cousin. Former Alabama corner, 1st round draft pick as well. Love adding those pieces on defense. They actually doubled up at linebacker and took Jalen McLeod out of Auburn in the 6th. Safety out of Navy. I think he may be one of the only academy guys drafted in the 6th round. And then wrap things up with Jonah Meinheim, the center out of USC, which is another guy I feel like at one point, kind of one of those guys like a year or 2 ago, you probably expected to go a little bit higher. And then LaQuint Allen adding another running back at the back end of the 7th there. A little bit different skill set than Tootin. A little bit more he's 6 foot 204, a little bit of a bigger dude compared to Tootin's, athleticism.
Yeah, man. Deep class for them. A lot of interesting prospects. Like you said, I like the mix between high upside athleticism and dudes who are productive. Definitely going to be interesting to see how Wyatt Millen pans out, and kind of looking at that as my favorite pick now, seeing how productive he was in college. But yeah, again, dude, this draft is going to come down to that Travis Hunter pick, man, because it's not just about the pick at number 2, it's also what you gave up in the future. Because if they end up having another bad season, Dakota, and that pick ends up being a top 10 pick, not going to look great, man. It's not going to look great. Even if Travis Hunter works out, man, this is going to be rough giving up to like a number 5th overall pick this year and a top 10 pick next year, even if Travis Hunter is good. So
yeah, that is what it will come down to. What's really interesting is they have 11 picks next year right now. Without their first, they have 3 3rd-round picks, which is pretty interesting. So they've still loaded up. So they'll have 4 picks most likely in the top 100. But those 3 thirds also give you the ability if you wanted to try to trade up next year to do it. But yeah, you're right. The what happens with Travis Hunter will be the storyline because of the capital given up for him. To be honest, I think it kind of wraps up his story perfectly that the guy we talk about as two players was worth essentially 2 first-round picks to the team that drafted him. That's
So
a pretty
true.
cool way to wrap up his college career and send him to the NFL. So I like that. So with that in mind, actually, I think they may have had,
A
yeah, they had some
UDFA.
interesting UDFAs. Yeah, they had Seth Hennigan, quarterback out of Memphis, who was starting to get a good amount of hype. Kind of surprised. Another one of those surprised he went undrafted. Interesting guy to add to the QB room as a potential kind of long-term-ish backup to Trevor Lawrence, who's had many injury things here or there. And then Jaquindon Jackson, Arkansas's running back as well. So a couple decent ones. And then we have to shout out, former Vol, but Danico Slaughter, who honestly played pretty well at Arkansas too. He's kind of pivotal in the reason we lost to them in this past season. So
Yeah, they brought in a ton of UDFAs, man, which is always interesting when a team does that. Brought in quite a few receivers too. They brought in like 5
yeah.
receivers, so get some receiver competition in there. So yeah, I like the UDFA class they brought in.
And Jabbar, I didn't even notice this. Jabbar Muhammad, corner out of Oregon, who was another one of those guys that, like, at different points in times had been hyped up to a certain level. So they got a lot of really interesting guys in their locker room from this class. So with that in mind, what is your favorite pick for the Jags?
Look at Wyatt Millen, man. Looking at that dude's production, I think he could end up being a starting guard or center or whatever in the NFL in the next level. So I like that pick a lot in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I think looking at their depth chart makes me think he could start at center this year. Like, he could
Yeah,
genuinely win that job in the offseason.
he really could.
I'm going to go independent from the trade. I'm going to say if the trade had happened and it was out of my control, I'm just going to go Travis Hunter.
Got to.
I just getting the face of your franchise like that, and a high character guy, good for kids to look up to come to the Jags games, wear his jersey, and to pair him alongside Brian Thomas Jr. is probably one of the coolest scenarios that could have happened with, Trevor Lawrence, who's still, the stats on him are ridiculous, that he's still like younger than most of the quarterbacks getting drafted right now. He's still really young. He's only like 25 or something. So getting him another weapon, love that. So perfect. All right. What does the consensus grade say about the Jags?
Top 10 draft coming in at number 10. I like it, man. I think some of these people probably downgraded them for the trade up for Travis Hunter as well, but that just kind of speaks to how well they did in this draft. Just some of the interesting higher upside guys they brought in, and the franchise changing player that Travis Hunter has the potential of being. So love it.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. That is the Jags 2025 class.